5 years later, Imperial Dreadnought, Eternal Glory. Admiral Vexthon examined the tactical display with growing unease. The massive Calaxian stood 8 feet tall, his reptilian features weathered by decades of conquest. In 50 years of service to the Galactic Empire, he had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. Nothing should have surprised him anymore. Yet here he was, staring at sensor data that made no sense. "Run the scan again," he ordered his tactical officer. Commander Yithsal, a spider-like arachnoid with 6 arms working multiple consoles simultaneously, clicked her mandibles nervously. "Sir, I've run it 12 times. The results are consistent." "Impossible," growled General Corax from across the bridge. The hulking Vorthon's rocky hide glistened under the ship's lights as he leaned over the display. "The human homeworld was glassed 5 years ago. Our fleet confirmed total extinction." Admiral Vexthon's golden eyes narrowed. "Then explain what our deep space monitors detected at the edge of the Terran system 3 months ago." The holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor readings. Blurry shapes moved through the asteroid fields where Earth once orbited, but these weren't random debris. The movement patterns were too organized, too purposeful. "Construction activity," Commander Yithsal reported. "Massive scale. Whatever. They're building. It's bigger than anything in our Imperial Navy database." "Building with what?" General Corax slammed a rocky fist on the console. "We vaporized their industrial base. We hunted down their colony ships. The human plague was eliminated." A new voice cut through their argument. "Were we really that thorough?" All heads turned to see Intelligence Director Zia Lin gliding onto the bridge. The ethereal scion moved without sound, her translucent form shimmering in the artificial light. Where most Empire races were selected for physical power, the scions served as the Emperor's eyes and ears, their mental abilities making them perfect spies. "Director," Admiral Vexthon inclined his massive head respectfully. Few beings in the galaxy could make a Calaxian show deference, but scions were among them. "Do you have intelligence on this situation?" Zalin's large black eyes reflected the tactical display. "I have been monitoring psychic emissions from the Terran system for months. What I've detected disturbs me." She gestured, and the holo display changed to show brainwave patterns. "This is a normal human psychic signature," she explained, pointing to a weak, chaotic pattern. "Humans were barely above animals in mental development. But observe what our sensors detect now." The pattern shifted to something entirely different. Stronger, more focused, more angry. These readings suggest the surviving humans have undergone significant psychological changes. The trauma of their world's destruction, combined with years of hardship, appears to have forged them into something we have never encountered before. General Corax laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Let them change all they want. We have 10,000 battleships. They have whatever scraps they cobbled together from asteroid mining." "Do we?" Zalin's mental voice carried into their minds with chilling clarity. "Admiral, show them the latest reconnaissance footage." The display changed again. This time it showed grainy video from a stealth probe that had ventured deep into the former Terran system. What they saw made the bridge fall silent. Massive structures hung in space where Earth's moon once orbited. Shipyards the size of cities. Construction platforms that dwarfed anything the Empire had ever built. And emerging from those yards, by the Emperor's crown, whispered Commander Yithsal. Ships. Dozens of them. But not the sleek curves and elegant lines of Imperial vessels. These were angular, brutal things. All armor and weapons with no concern for aesthetic beauty. They looked like they had been designed for one purpose: war. But it was their size that made the bridge crew stare in shock. Each vessel was easily 3 times larger than an Imperial dreadnought. How? General Corax's usual bluster had vanished. How did they build this in 5 years? Zalin's form flickered with what might have been concern. "I believe they had help." Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Commander Yithsal's 6 arms flew over her consoles. "Sir, multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system perimeter." Admiral Vexthon rushed to the command console. "Imperial reinforcements?" Negative, sir. The signatures are unknown. The main display showed space twisting as massive shapes emerged from faster-than-light travel. One after another, enormous vessels appeared at the edge of the system. Their black hulls seemed to absorb light itself, making them appear as holes cut from the starfield. 27 contacts and rising, reported Commander Yithsal, her voice tight with fear. Sir, some of these ships are over 10 kilometers long. General Korak stared at the display. No race in the galaxy builds ships that large, the engineering requirements alone. His words died as communication signals flooded their receivers. The voice that came through their speakers was unmistakably human, but changed. Harder. Colder. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran. Expeditionary Force, you are trespassing in human space. Admiral Vexthon felt his blood chill. He remembered that name from the intelligence files. Sarah Chen had been Earth's ambassador, the woman who sent the final transmission before their homeworld burned. Impossible, he whispered. You're dead. You're all dead. Sarah Chen's laugh carried no warmth. Death is a luxury we couldn't afford. You taught us that 5 years ago. Now we're here to return the favor. On the tactical display, the human fleet began moving toward the Imperial task force. Their formation was perfect, too perfect. No fleet moved with that level of coordination, without years of joint training or... They're sharing a collective consciousness, Zalin said, her mental voice filled with amazement and horror. Somehow they're all mentally linked. That's impossible for a non-psychic species. Admiral Vexthon opened a channel. Admiral Chen, I am Admiral Vexthon of the Imperial Navy. You are outnumbered 50-1. Surrender now, and the Empire may show mercy. The response came immediately. Mercy? Like the mercy you showed the children of Earth? The mercy you gave our elderly? Our sick? Sarah Chen's voice grew deadly quiet. We learned something important that day, Admiral. The galaxy understands only one language: force. Today, we speak it fluently. The human ships accelerated. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming any academies survived what was coming. Imperial Command Ship Dominion's Fist. Main Bridge Admiral Vexthon had commanded fleets in the Andorian Wars, crushed the Centauri Rebellion, and personally overseen the pacification of 12 systems. He understood warfare, but watching the human fleet approach, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. All ships battle formation Omega-7, he commanded. Prepare to demonstrate Imperial superiority. 50 Imperial warships moved into attack position. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and destroyers forming overlapping fields of fire. It was a formation that had broken enemy fleets across the galaxy. The humans kept coming. Sir, Commander Yithsal's voice cracked slightly. They're not changing course. They're going to fly straight into our formation. General Korax pounded his rocky fist on the tactical display. Then they're fools. Concentrated fire from 50 ships will vaporize them. But Intelligence Director Zalin was studying the readings more carefully. Her ethereal form pulsed with agitation. Something's wrong. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their fleet, but not from weapons. From their ships themselves. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the human fleet did something that defied every rule of space combat. Instead of spreading out to minimize damage from concentrated fire, they moved closer together. Their 27 ships formed a tight wedge formation, each vessel's shields overlapping with its neighbors. Target the lead ship, Admiral Vexthon ordered. All batteries, coordinated bombardment on my mark. The massive guns of 50 Imperial warships swiveled toward the approaching human fleet. Energy readings spiked across the battle zone as enough firepower to crack a planet's crust prepared to focus on a single target. Fire! Space lit up like a newborn star. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and quantum torpedoes converged on the lead human vessel, a massive angular ship that looked more like a flying fortress than a traditional spacecraft. The attack should have vaporized the target instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The lead ship absorbed the impact without taking visible damage. But more than that, it somehow distributed the energy throughout the entire human formation. Every ship in their fleet glowed briefly as the Imperial attack's power spread among them like water flowing through connected vessels. Impossible, breathed Commander Yithsal. Their entire fleet is acting like a single organism. The human formation didn't even slow down. All ships evasive maneuvers. Admiral Vexthon barked, but it was too late. The human fleet had closed to optimal firing range, and what happened next redefined the concept of overwhelming firepower. Instead of the bright energy weapons favored by most galactic civilizations, the human ships opened up with something far more primitive and far more terrifying. Kinetic weapons. Thousands of them. Massive magnetic railguns hurled tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. But these weren't simple bullets. Each projectile was guided by its own AI, capable of course correction and target acquisition, and they came in swarms. Evasive action, General Korax roared, but Imperial warships were built for firepower and armor, not agility. The first wave of projectiles tore through the Imperial formation like needles through cloth. Where energy shields might deflect particle beams, they offered little protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The dreadnought Emperor's Wrath took 17 hits in 3 seconds. Each projectile punched clean through its armor and exploded inside, turning the massive warship into an expanding cloud of debris. But the kinetic barrage was just the beginning. As the Imperial fleet reeled from the initial assault, the human ships revealed their true innovation. Each vessel began launching what appeared to be fighters, but these weren't manned craft. They were AI-controlled drones, each one carrying enough firepower to threaten a cruiser. Drone swarms, Commander Yithsal reported. Thousands of them. They're moving with coordinated intelligence. Admiral Vexthon watched in horror as his disciplined battle formation dissolved into chaos. Imperial captains, trained to fight other Imperial-style fleets, had no answer for weapons that thought for themselves and tactics that adapted in real time. A communication came through from one of his battle cruisers. Admiral, these drones are learning our defensive patterns. Each wave adapts to our responses. It was then that Vexthon realized the true horror of what they faced. This wasn't just a technologically superior fleet. It was a collective intelligence that learned from every exchange of fire, adapted to every defensive measure, and shared that knowledge instantly across all units. Director Zalin, he called, to the intelligence officer. How is this possible? The science form flickered with what might have been fear. I believe I understand now. The humans didn't just survive the destruction of their world. They were transformed by it. The trauma, the necessity of cooperation for survival, the need to think and act as one. It broke down the barriers between individual minds. She gestured to the tactical display where human ships moved in perfect unison, their AI drones coordinating attacks with inhuman precision. They're not a crew of humans controlling machines anymore. They've become something new, a hybrid consciousness of biological minds and artificial intelligence, all networked together. Each ship is both individual and part of a greater whole. General. Korax stared at the destruction of his fleet with stone-faced disbelief. We're fighting the entire human species as a single entity? Not just their species, Zalin replied quietly. Their machines, their AI, their ships. All of it thinking and learning together. We're not fighting 27 ships, Admiral. We're fighting 27 bodies of a single massively distributed mind. The implications hit Vexthon like a physical blow. Every battle tactic in the Imperial military doctrine assumed you. We're fighting individuals, beings with limited communication, divided command structures, human error and hesitation. But how do you fight an enemy that has no communication lag, no chain of command, no individual weaknesses to exploit? As if to answer his unspoken question, the human fleet demonstrated their next innovation. The ships that had been launching drones suddenly began transforming themselves. Hull sections reconfigured, weapons arrays shifted, and what had been 27 individual vessels began linking together into larger structures. They're combining, whispered Commander Yithsal. Indeed they were. Before the stunned eyes of the Imperial survivors, the human fleet merged into 7 massive constructs, each one the size of a space station. And from these new megaships came a message that chilled the blood of every Imperial officer. "This is Admiral Chen speaking to any Imperial survivors. You came to our system to observe and report. We will allow some of you to fulfill that mission. Return to your empire. Tell them what you saw here." A pause, then. "Tell them we remember Earth. Tell them we remember every human child they murdered. Tell them we have learned patience, but we have not learned forgiveness." The megaships began moving away from the battle zone. Their message clear. The demonstration was over. Admiral Vex Thon looked around his bridge. Of his 50-ship task force, only 8 vessels remained intact enough to make the journey home. The rest were debris or fleeing on emergency power. "Admiral," General Corax's voice was barely a whisper, "what do we tell the Emperor?" Vex Thon stared at the retreating human fleet, knowing that everything had changed. The galaxy's greatest military power had just been casually swatted aside by a species they'd tried to exterminate. "We tell him the truth," he said finally. "Humanity is no longer human." Imperial Palace, Nexus Prime. 3 weeks later, Emperor. Thalgoron had ruled the galaxy for 47 years. In that time, he had conquered 300 systems, absorbed dozens of civilizations, and created the largest empire in recorded history. His throne room had seen the surrender of kings, the prostration of generals, and the pleas of entire species for mercy. Today, for the first time in decades, he felt something approaching fear. The holographic display in the center of the vast chamber showed the battle footage Admiral Vex Thon had brought back. Around the throne, representatives from every major species in the Empire watched in stunned silence as humanity's fleet casually destroyed 50 Imperial warships. "Play it again," the Emperor commanded. His aide, a nervous insectoid named Clix-9, manipulated the controls with trembling claws. For the 7th time, the assembled leaders watched the impossible: ships that moved as one mind, weapons that learned and adapted in real time, and technology that seemed to mock everything the Empire understood about warfare. "Your Majesty," Fleet Admiral Zox Prime stepped forward. The massive Goronite's crystalline body reflected the hologram's light as he spoke. "This could be an elaborate deception. Perhaps these humans are actually another species masquerading as the creatures we destroyed." Emperor Thalgoron's 4 eyes fixed on his military commander. "Director Zalin, what does intelligence conclude?" The Scion intelligence director materialized near the throne. "Your Majesty, psychic analysis confirms these are indeed humans, but transformed beyond our initial understanding. The neural patterns match, but they've been enhanced." She gestured, and the display changed to show brainwave readings. Standard human consciousness operates as isolated individuals. These new humans appear to share a collective unconscious, while maintaining individual awareness. It's unprecedented in our knowledge of galactic psychology. "How?" demanded General Brax, the Empire's chief military strategist. The reptilian saurid scales rippled with agitation. "Species don't evolve that rapidly." "They didn't evolve," Zalin replied. "They were forged. 5 years of desperate survival, combined with their natural adaptability and what appears to be widespread integration with artificial intelligence, created something entirely new." Emperor Thalgoron absorbed this information with growing unease. In 4 decades of rule, he had learned that the greatest threats to empires came not from external enemies, but from fundamental changes in the nature of power itself. "What are their capabilities?" he asked. Admiral Vex Thon, still bearing wounds from the encounter, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, what we faced was unlike anything in our military database. Their ships are larger, faster, and more heavily armed than our dreadnoughts. Their weapons adapt to our defenses in real time. Their coordination is perfect." He paused, his reptilian features grim. "But the worst part is their production capacity. Intelligence estimates suggest they're building ships at 10 times our maximum output rate." "Impossible." Fleet Admiral Zox Prime's crystalline form resonated with disbelief. "No single system has the resources for that level of construction." "They're not using a single system anymore," Intelligence Director Zalin interjected. "Long range." Reconnaissance suggests they've established construction facilities throughout the former Terran sector. They're strip mining entire asteroids fields and converting the raw materials directly into warships. A new voice joined the conversation, one that made every being in the throne room tense. Chief Executor Malthek, the Emperor's personal enforcer, spoke from the shadows where he always lurked. "Your Majesty," the ancient being's voice carried the weight of centuries, "I have studied the recordings carefully. This is not just a military threat. This is an existential challenge to imperial doctrine itself." The executor stepped into the light, revealing a form that defied easy description. Part machine, part organic matter, all nightmare. He had served the imperial throne for over 200 years, crushing rebellions and eliminating threats to imperial power. Our empire succeeds because we can predict and counter the behavior of individual leaders, separate fleets, divided civilizations. But how do you negotiate with a species that thinks as one? How do you corrupt leaders who share consciousness with their people? How do you divide an enemy that has already unified at the deepest possible level? Emperor Thalgoran felt the truth of those words. The Empire's greatest strength had always been its ability to exploit the weaknesses of individualistic species. Their political divisions, their competing interests, their inability to sustain perfect cooperation. "What do you recommend, Executor?" Malthek's artificial eyes glowed in the throne room's dim light. "Total war, Your Majesty. Immediate mobilization of the entire Imperial fleet. Strike now while they're still consolidating their new capabilities." Fleet Admiral Zox Prime resonated disagreement. "Your Majesty, such an action would require pulling ships from every sector of the Empire. It would leave us vulnerable to other threats." "What other threats?" General Brax hissed. "If these humans continue to expand their capabilities, there won't be an empire left to defend." Emperor Thalgoran raised a hand for silence. The debate died immediately. After 47 years of absolute rule, his authority was unquestioned. "Director Za Lin, what are the humans' intentions? Are they planning to attack Imperial territory?" The Scion's form flickered uncertainly. "Your Majesty, their psychic emanations suggest patience. They're not preparing for immediate offensive operations. They appear to be consolidating their position and continuing to build their strength." "They're waiting," realized Admiral Vexthon. "But for what?" Chief Executor Malthek's mechanical voice carried a chill certainty. "They're waiting for us to make the first move. They want us to come to them." "A trap?" asked General Brax. "Something worse," the executor replied. "They're confident they can defeat anything we send. They want us to throw our fleets against them so they can demonstrate their superiority to the entire galaxy. The implications of this hit every leader in the room. If the Empire's military might could be publicly broken by a supposedly extinct species, it would shatter the psychological foundations of imperial control. Rebellions would explode across every sector. Emperor Thalgoran stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Summon every fleet commander, every sector governor, every military advisor in the Empire. We will not wait for the humans to grow stronger. We will not allow them to choose the time and place of our conflict." He turned to face the holographic display, where images of humanity's new ships continued to play. "Ready every battleship, every carrier, every weapon in the Imperial arsenal. We go to war not just to destroy an enemy, but to prove that individual ambition and Imperial will still dominate this galaxy." His four eyes blazed with determination and something approaching madness. "If the humans want to see what total war looks like, we will show them. Ready the Grand Armada. We march on the Terran system in 1 month." As his subordinates hurried to carry out his orders, Emperor Thalgoran remained staring at the display. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that he was making a terrible mistake. He ignored it. After all, he was the Emperor. He had never been wrong about matters of war. Had he? Terran system. 1 month later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the TES Retribution, watching the impossible sight filling the view screen before her. The Imperial Grand Armada had arrived, 5,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, stretching from one side of the system to the other, It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Impressive, commented her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb. Like all the surviving humans, Marcus showed the subtle changes their species had undergone. Enhanced neural implants that allowed instant communication with the ship's AI, modified eyes that could process tactical data directly, and a calm certainty that came from being part of something larger than individual consciousness. "They've brought everything," observed Chief Engineer Dr. Elena Vasquez from her station. "Every ship class in the Imperial arsenal. This is their entire military might." Sarah nodded, feeling the collective analysis of her species flowing through her consciousness. Every human in the fleet was connected through their neural network, sharing observations, tactical assessments, and strategic calculations at the speed of thought. They had known this moment would come. The Empire could not allow humanity's transformation to go unchallenged, and Emperor Thalgoran was too proud to accept that a species he'd tried to exterminate had become something beyond his understanding. "Communication incoming," reported their AI interface officer. The distinction between human and artificial intelligence had largely disappeared among the new humanity. They were partners, symbionts, two forms of consciousness working as one. Emperor Thalgoran's image appeared on the main screen. Even through the transmission, his presence was imposing. 12 feet tall, armored in ceremonial regalia, with 4 eyes that burned with absolute authority. "I am Emperor Thalgoran, ruler of the Galactic Empire, master of 3,000 systems, commander of 5,000 worlds. You will surrender immediately and submit to Imperial judgment for the crime of resisting Imperial authority." Sarah felt the collective anger of humanity surge through the neural network. 5 years of grief, rage, and determination condensed into a moment of perfect clarity. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen," she replied, her voice carrying not just her own authority, but the unified will of her entire species. "The last time we spoke, you were murdering children on Earth while demanding our surrender. How did that work out for you?" The Emperor's expression darkened. "Your homeworld burns. Your species should be extinct. Yet you dare to mock Imperial power? Mock?" Sarah's smile was cold as space itself. "Your Majesty, we're not mocking anything. We're simply demonstrating that evolution doesn't always follow the path you expect." Behind her, the tactical display showed humanity's fleet positioning itself throughout the system. Unlike the Empire's traditional formation, the human ships had spread out in a complex, three-dimensional web, each vessel supporting the others, while maintaining perfect coordination through their shared consciousness. "You face the combined might of the Galactic Empire," the Emperor continued. 5,000 warships, 10 million crew members, weapons that have conquered the galaxy. Surrender now, and some of you may survive to serve the Empire. Sarah felt the collective decision of humanity flow through the network. No debate, no discussion needed. They all knew what their answer would be. "Your Majesty, 5 years ago, you taught us an important lesson. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to claim it. Today we'd like to return the favor." The transmission ended. What followed would be known as the Battle of Terran Reclamation, though historians would debate whether battle was the right word for what occurred. The Imperial fleet opened fire, first 5,000 ships unleashing enough concentrated firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. The attack lit up space like a newborn supernova, energy beams and missiles converging on the scattered human vessels. And just like in the first encounter with Admiral Vexthon's fleet, something impossible happened. The human ships didn't try to dodge the attack. Instead, they absorbed it. Every vessel in the human fleet was connected not just through communication, but through their energy systems themselves. The devastating Imperial bombardment struck their formation and was instantly distributed across the entire network, each ship taking only a fraction of the total damage. But more than that, the human ships converted the incoming energy into power for their own systems. "Impossible!" Emperor Thalgoran's voice echoed across Imperial communication channels. "No technology exists that can absorb that much energy. Their technology doesn't." came Admiral Vexthon's grim reply from his flagship. But they're not using just technology anymore, Your Majesty. They've become something that transcends the boundaries between organic life, artificial intelligence, and pure energy. As if to prove his point, the human response began. Instead of energy weapons or even the kinetic projectiles they'd used before, humanity unveiled their ultimate innovation, weapons that thought. From each human ship emerged what appeared to be living streams of energy, but these weren't random discharges. Each stream moved with purpose, intelligence, and adaptability. They flowed through space like luminous serpents, seeking out Imperial vessels with predatory precision. When the energy stream struck Imperial ships, they didn't simply explode. They invaded, flowing through hull breaches, analyzing defensive systems, learning the ship's weaknesses, and then sharing that information instantly with every other stream in the battle. The Imperial fleet found itself fighting an enemy that learned from every defensive measure they employed and shared that knowledge instantaneously across the entire battlefield. All ships, evasive action, Fleet Admiral Zox Prime commanded, but it was already too late. The human energy streams were adapting faster than the Imperial ships could react. What started as conventional combat quickly became a demonstration of evolutionary superiority, an ancient static military doctrine being systematically dismantled by an enemy that improved with every moment of engagement. Emperor Thalgoran watched in horror as his Grand Armada, the pride of galactic civilization, was torn apart. Not by superior firepower, but by superior intelligence. His ships weren't just being destroyed, they were being understood, analyzed, and countered by an enemy that learned exponentially. Your Majesty, Chief Executor Malthek's voice crackled over the command channel. We have to retreat. This isn't a battle, it's a slaughter. But the Emperor's pride would not allow such an admission. No, we are the Galactic Empire. We have ruled for 1,000 years. We will not be defeated by an extinct species. They are not extinct anymore, Admiral, Vexthon replied grimly. And I'm not sure they're still the same species we tried to eliminate. As if summoned by his words, Sarah Chen's image appeared on every Imperial ship's communication system simultaneously, a feat that should have been impossible without access to their encrypted networks. Emperor Thalgoran, she said, her voice carrying the calm certainty of absolute victory. You wanted to demonstrate Imperial power. Instead, you've shown the galaxy something much more important. Around the battlefield, the surviving Imperial ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that pulsed with contained energy. Weapons held in check, but ready to obliterate anything that continued to resist. You've shown them that empires, built on fear and conquest, are ultimately fragile things. They depend on the perception of invincibility, and that perception dies the moment people realize their oppressors can be defeated. Emperor Thalgoran stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Of his 5,000 ships, less than 800 remained intact. The rest were either destroyed or disabled, their crews evacuated by human rescue vessels that had appeared as if from nowhere. What do you want? He asked finally. Sarah's smile held no warmth. Justice, Your Majesty. You came to our home and murdered 3 billion innocent people. You declared war on humanity because we refused to submit to your authority. Today, we're finishing that war. The Emperor felt something he hadn't experienced in 47 years of absolute rule. Helplessness. But, Sarah continued, we're not you. We won't commit genocide. We won't murder children. We'll give you the same choice you once gave us, bow or burn. The communication channel fell silent except for the background hum of dying Imperial ships. Finally, Emperor Thalgoran spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy and mark the beginning of a new age. The Galactic Empire surrenders. Epilogue. A new dawn 1 year later. Earth Orbital Station. New Geneva, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the rebuilt United Nations Assembly, but the chamber looked very different than it had before the Empire's attack. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, former Imperial subjects who had declared independence after news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. The Age of Empire is over, she announced to the assembled delegates. No single species will ever again hold absolute dominion over the galaxy. We propose instead a confederation of free worlds, united by mutual respect rather than conquered by force. In the gallery, she could see former Imperial officers sitting beside resistance leaders who had fought against Imperial occupation for decades. The Calaxians sat near the arachnoids, the Scions communicated mentally with the insectoids, and dozens of other species worked together to build something the galaxy had never seen, a truly voluntary alliance. Humanity's transformation, Sarah continued, taught us that survival requires not just individual strength but collective wisdom. We invite every free species to join us in building a future where diversity is celebrated rather than suppressed. As she spoke, Sarah felt the collective consciousness of her species observing through her eyes. But the neural network that had once been humanity's desperate adaptation to survival was evolving again. The rigid unity born from tragedy was gradually becoming something more flexible, a way of sharing knowledge and experience while preserving individual choice. They were becoming not a hive mind, but something unprecedented, a truly voluntary, collective consciousness where beings could choose when to connect and when to remain individual. In orbit around the reconstructed Earth, massive shipyards continued their work. But the vessels being built there weren't weapons of war. They were exploration ships, colony transports, and research vessels designed to spread life and knowledge throughout the galaxy, rather than death and conquest. The former Emperor Thalgoran, stripped of his titles and power, had been given a small colony world where he could live out his days in exile. Many had called for his execution, but Sarah had argued for mercy. Genocide, even of a single individual, was not who humanity chose to become. "Your Excellency," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Admiral Vexthon approaching. The former Imperial commander now served as a military advisor to the new Confederation, helping other species adapt to the reality of cooperative defense rather than Imperial conquest. "Admiral," she greeted him. "How are the integration protocols?" "Progressing." His reptilian features showed something that might have been a smile. "Better than expected. The Goronite's crystal matrix processing systems interface remarkably well with human AI networks, and the Scions are fascinated by the possibilities of voluntary collective consciousness." Sarah nodded. In the months since the Empire's fall, humanity had shared its transformation freely with any species that wished to explore similar developments. Not all chose to pursue neural networking, but the option remained open. "There's something else," Vexthon continued, his voice carrying a note of concern. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something unusual at the galaxy's edge." Sarah's enhanced awareness immediately connected to the Confederation's intelligence network, processing the information in milliseconds. "The signals from beyond the galactic rim? Precisely, they're not natural phenomena. Something is out there watching us, something that's been observing our conflict with the Empire." Through the neural link, Sarah felt the collective attention of humanity focus on this new information. In the years since their victory, they had assumed their greatest challenge was rebuilding galactic civilization, but the universe, it seemed, had other plans. "Any indication of intent?" she asked. Vexthon's golden eyes reflected uncertainty. "That's what concerns us. Whatever's out there has technology advanced enough to observe us from outside the galaxy, without being detected until now. They've watched the Empire fall, seen our transformation, witnessed the birth of the Confederation. And they've done nothing," Sarah finished, "which means either they're peaceful observers or they're waiting for something." "There's a third possibility," came a new voice. Both turned to see Intelligence Director Za Lin materializing nearby. The Scion's ethereal form pulsed with agitation. "Director?" Sarah prompted. "I've been analyzing the psychic resonance of these signals. What we're detecting isn't just observation, it's evaluation. Something is judging whether our new galactic civilization meets their criteria." Sarah felt a chill despite the warmth of Earth's restored sun streaming through the station's windows. "Criteria for what?" "I don't know," Za Lin admitted. "But given the scope of technology required to monitor an entire galaxy from outside its boundaries, I suspect we're about to discover that humanity's transformation was only the beginning of a much larger story. Outside the viewport, construction continued on humanity's newest class of vessels. Not warships, but deep space exploration craft designed to venture beyond the galactic rim. What had started as a mission to rebuild their world was evolving into something far more ambitious, the next step in galactic evolution. Sarah looked out at the stars, feeling the collective consciousness of humanity stirring with new purpose. They had survived extinction, transformed themselves, defeated an empire, and built a new form of civilization. Now, it seemed, they were about to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of known space. "Prepare the deep space fleet," she said quietly. "It's time to find out who's been watching us." As alarms sounded throughout the station and ships began powering up across the system, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest test still lay ahead. The galaxy had been conquered. But the universe? The universe was still waiting. In the depths of space beyond the galactic rim, ancient sensors recorded humanity's preparations with interest. After millennia of waiting, watching, and evaluating the development of galactic civilization, the observers had finally found what they were looking for, a species that could evolve beyond its limitations, a civilization that chose cooperation over conquest, a collective consciousness that preserved individual freedom. The test was complete. The invitation would soon be extended. Humanity was about to discover that they were not alone in the universe, and that the galactic empire they had defeated was nothing more than a single grain of sand on an infinite cosmic beach. The real adventure was just beginning. The end